Hey, this is Mo Lunsford at Union Grove Lumber Studios.
And this is the Shed Geek. We want to welcome you to today's episode. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Shed Geek podcast on this dreary, melancholy, weathery day down here in Southern Illinois. Zach, I don't know what you're seeing there, but I'll tell you what. You want to just introduce yourself, who you are, your company, and maybe a little bit about what you do to familiarize yourself there with the industry.
Yeah, my name is Zach Larison. I am the owner and operator of AZ Custom Remodeling out of Atwood, Kansas. We recently got into the post frame and barn dominium side of construction within the last year, and we're seeing a lot of fun things and growth out of that. We've been doing home remodels and that kind of thing for, October was 8 years that we've been in business. So we're getting up there towards the little higher side of almost double digits. And it's kind of fun to look back and see the growth on that.
I would imagine it's been, it's been quite the journey. We have some mutual friends, and that's part of how we sort of got connected. And it's sort of a testimony to collaboration and networking. You have been on a podcast with our friends over at Gary Bontrager Consulting, and then also our friends Randy Chafee and the podcast they do with Building Winds. So, man, you're making the podcast circuit complete now. You're making.
That's right. That's right. So. You've been one I've been following around for a little bit, watching you guys, and I like your content and what you put on. Randy and Gary, they're great guys and good friends in general. We still talk and chat and get to kind of bounce ideas back and forth, and it's just good to have those kind of people around and on your side.
Man, they're so they're very active on social media, but they're just so genuine and like friendly guys. Like, I'm almost, I don't even want to tell him, but I'm almost convinced to like start that 75 hard that I saw Randy doing. Cause I'm like, like this guy's just putting me to shame, like he's over here killing it. And I'm like, I probably should do something, to physically to treat myself as far as, taking care of myself more. I'm on the road so much, so it's hard to eat right and things like that. And he just blows all those excuses out of the water. He's like, I just go do it. I get it done. And I'm impressed and always appreciate him. And Gary, Gary's such a thought leader to me. Gary and Ray, those guys are just like, they're so fun to bounce ideas off of. And who knows, maybe you'll see some more of what we're doing with them in the future. Should things work out, but so I got to go back and listen to those. So my plan was to actually spend some time listening to your story, but we connected by phone, and I feel like we can add some value to people's day here by having some conversation. So take me through, Zach, how you got into post frame. We're all about sheds here. And the one thing I find interesting is like you can go into places like Michigan and they can have a 80 by 120 and they can call it their shed out in their backyard. So like the description of shed has really changed depending on where you can be demographically, but it's all construction. It's all kind of related. Tell me your story, man. How did you get here? You're in Kansas. But what was your start into post frame? Just lay it out for me.
We have a pretty interesting dynamic as far as our customers goes. It's very largely agriculture out in this neck of the woods. And like you say, you can have a huge old building out back and he'll say, go out there to the shed and get the tractor out. And so we've got a lot of that going on. And I had several clients in a row that, and it was almost strange at the time because I wasn't doing anything like that. And about 3 guys in a row said, hey man, would you be able to put me up a building? And I said, well, it's something we can look into. And it's something that let's chat about it here as things go and kind of see what you're looking for. And at that time, we didn't have the capacity, the manpower, the supply. We didn't have anything going. And so I looked into it, and I ended up finding another company that could help him out for the time being, and got him set up. And then we've had a couple other guys that have waited as I've embarked on this journey over the last 18 months of getting everything tied down. It's been kind of fun to go through and have all of our contracts and verbiage and our suppliers and the getting to be members of the National Frame Building Association, and the literature and the classes they put on Tuesdays, and what they bring to this industry is just cool. We're just lucky to be a part of that and get to take some of what they've learned over the history of this and put it to use in our own area. And we really, one of my things about it is they just have a code of conduct, like their core values. And I really like that. That's one of the things in our company that we're super big about is our core values. Really simple: being respectful, doing the right thing, transparent communication. Those are all the things we built this on over the years, and they've become detrimental now to what we're doing, and getting to be aligned with other people has been exciting. We just put up, so 2 weeks ago, we just started our very first post frame building, and it went up in Wichita, Kansas. And it's a shed. It's what it is. So we got that up, and they poured concrete on it yesterday, and got to see some pictures of that. And boy, it's just been fun. So, I mean, we're talking 18 months of really diligent work on the front end, and it's gone fairly seamless. I mean, we've had a couple hiccups that we've had to navigate and work through, but for the most part, everything that we worked on has just fallen into place. And the supplier's been great. We had one little issue with material, and it was handled. And I really do think that was the relationship that we built over the last year, trying to get this all in line and talking with them and building a friendship almost on business. And it's just been fun, man. I've met so many cool people since I started doing this, and man, it almost blows my mind when I really sit back and think about it. Like, I didn't do this. I was in the right place at the right time. I mean, God was really the one that put it out there. And that's the thing. I mean, I'm just here going through the motions, doing what I do, and things just keep happening. And I can't really say that. I mean, yeah, I put in the work and we did it, but if it wasn't meant to be, it wouldn't be happening.
Yep. At iFab LLC, our passion is welding, fabricating, and design. That's why in 2015, we began to commercially market our product to the shed, portable building, and mini barn industry. Our product is primarily used to build trusses. Our truss saw system cuts boards in one motion, and our truss press system installs and presses the gusset plates to a finished truss. We custom fabricate jigs that assure perfectly symmetrical truss setup without error. We also have other products designed to help your shed builder increase quality, efficiency, and save money. Our precision door tape will build your custom doors square every time and easily adjust to build any door. For products like these or other custom fabrication services for your barn shop, visit ifabllc.com or call 563-422-7496 or simply email us at ifabllc@gmail.com. Man, I love it. I love your attitude toward everything. I watch it sort of on social media, and you're such a supporter and a positive person, and I'm sure, and we'll get to that part of the story where sort of, you have a reason for that, and you have sort of a story behind, personal story and testimony, and we can kind of share that. A couple of things you mentioned on there and your talking points there is the NFBA. For a lot of people who watch the Shed Geek podcast, they might know about the shed industry, the different things that happens over at like Shield Wall Media with like, the Garage Shed Carport Builder show, metal frame builder show, metal con, there's a lot of different things. And then of course the Shed Expo, which sort of graduated from the shed show to the big shed show to the Shed Expo. And it's a annual endeavor, but the NFBA, the National Framing Barn Association, Post Frame Barn. I'm probably butchering that, but I've been a couple years. So I went to the last 2 years, met some really cool builders, and they're just not all so much different than shed builders. As a matter of fact, I've even seen some shed people there and some people who offer services or products in the shed industry, what we'd call the mini barn, maybe the mini barn sort of industry is there in the shed industry that is the post frame. And that means so much. Post frame means, graduating from people who are minimalistic, who want tiny homes, to these barn dominiums, which are like these bigger, buildings that are all inclusive, home and garage and shed and whatever you want to call it. It's all in one. And this is what's beautiful is like, while every shed lot in America might not mimic that, there's a lot of shed manufacturers that sort of offset their mini barn business whenever it's slow or vice versa with sort of like this post frame idea, so, and it's actually way bigger. The post frame industry is much larger, is my understanding, as I research it, than even the mini barn business. But you'll know just by going to like one of the trade shows like the NFBA, it's huge. I mean, there's so many vendors there, and I just keep contemplating getting a booth the last 2 years and just get some interviews with all these people. Cause I mean, there's so many services, products, builders, you name it, they're all there. So yeah, for those who want to know more about the NFBA, definitely go check that out. 2 things I wanted to ask you. One, what size building are you building right now?
We're putting up a 48 by 80 with 16-foot sidewalls.
Nice. Very cool. And then you talked about customer acquisition time, really, because you said, we started on this a year ago or 18 months, which really can become a totally different monster whenever you start thinking about trying to acquire a customer and who your customers are. Impulsive shoppers are oftentimes mini barn buyers, where they'll come in and maybe spend an hour or two closing the deal. But I'm curious, how much time do you spend with these customers sort of visualizing this and dreaming with them? And what's that process look like?
So that's where it's fun to me. Cause I'm kind of nerdy all in all. Like we have computer programs that we can build. We use Smart Build. Mm-hmm. So we can build it on the computer. And that is really the fun time with me, to sit down with a couple, break out my color charts and what I have as far as my metal samples go, and really start from, well, what are we doing here? What's the dream idea, the 100%? And so we have some people who are 20 minutes in and out. We have a building, they're ready to go. And we have other people, unlike our barn dominium side. I spent the morning in a meeting with one of our clients that they live in Colorado and they're building up in Nebraska. They're building kind of a hunting lodge, little vacation zone on some ground they acquired. And we're working directly with them and the interior designer, the architect, and bouncing ideas back and forth and seeing where the contractor needs to be ready to kind of flex on some of what we want to build. Like, we've got a pretty good idea of what we're doing, but also, is that going to work with the interior design that we want? So we spent about an hour this morning on the Zoom with them and getting, their ideas and where they're going. And so it really fluctuates. I mean, it can be as little as 20 minutes up to, man, I bet we could put 20 hours in on some of these. and it's just fun. I mean, the people we get to meet, this client him and his wife are great. They're just a riot. They're fun to be around. And a lot of times, it's dinner and we're just talking and kind of going over, well, if we can we shave can we shave a little bit here and maybe put a little extra on the inside and things like that. And we like to work with them. I mean, our business is AZ Custom Remodeling, and that's really when I started it, and it got big enough to where we were doing things. I wanted people to get what they want. And to me, that's what's important. Being able to provide, yeah, it's got to work and it's got to be functional, but also let's talk about what you're going with. Do you want fancy and extravagant, or are we looking for more of the country rustic? And I like helping people. I like helping people achieve their dreams and their goals in our company as far as our guys go, and also with our clients. They're a lot of fun. That's just what it's all about. At a certain point, I changed my mindset on what I wanted to do with business, and I went from chasing dollars to providing help. Help in the means of service and being able to solve the problems that these people may have and come up with. And it's just been beneficial. It went from completely struggling to get by to now we're in this honestly way out of our league sort of situation. I never would have dreamed we'd be here, right? So, and I think a lot of that has to do with their mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me write mindset down so I can come back to that. You talked about dinner with customers. I say all the time, like it means as much to me to sit down and almost break bread with you and kind of get to know you. I'm in this weird predicament where I'm coming up on like 200 episodes recorded, and it's actually terribly, terribly frustrating to me to begin to forget some of the conversation that we've had, because I just don't have the mental capacity to hold it all. And I love being able to go back and listen to what we talked about and be like, oh, that's right. That's great. I remember that. Because that's the way I communicate. That's sort of my language as a person, is to build and to connect with you, to sort of, I don't know, somebody told me one time, I've heard this phrase many times, that's just business. And I think that there's a time where maybe that's relevant. It's just such a hard concept for me to grasp, because like in business, it's the same way within family or ministry or whatever. I just don't know how to separate one from the other. Like whoever is in front of me today, I don't put them in a category of business, friend, church, like any of that stuff. It's all like, hey, they're just people. And like I'm just going to be me around people, no matter who they are. And I love sitting down, having dinner with someone, hearing their story. I'm convinced the best podcasts that exist will never have a microphone put in front of them. Their personal relationships and conversations that happen off the air that really hold some tremendous value. But there's nothing better than going and sitting down with the client, getting to know them, and building community. So that's awesome. And then mindset. You spoke to mindset. I really wanted to touch on that because, I have to watch my own mindset. I have to, think about, publicly how you display yourself and what you let in, because what you let in is ultimately going to affect who you are. So if you're chasing dollars, as you said, that's all you have tunnel vision, almost trying to concentrate on that. And the customer might not be being serviced to the maximum efficiency. If you can just focus on helping them, it's amazing how the dollars follow without even trying.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about your story, and I definitely want to come back and talk specifically about like post frame. I think it'd be really good to sort of like come back to that topic. But me and you kind of connected, and we were sort of talking about, I wonder if some of your mindset changes because you've had like changes in your life in general, and that's sort of your testimony. I kind of talked about, like, me and Dylan, the marketing partner that I work with, we we met through a faith-based drug and alcohol rehabilitation effort where we were trying to, help people. And we still really try to help people in our community. It's just not our primary focus, and it's something that we're always probably going to do no matter what. But I kind of wanted to touch on your story because even for a while I thought, man, I needed to do a podcast that sort of discussed the ugliness around things like addiction, or the things like just, having hearing people's testimonies and seeing the changes that God does in their life. So tell me a little bit about Zach, who he is, where he came from, and where he is now.
Hello, shed seller. Do you feel like some days you are on an island trying to navigate through the complexity of perfecting your shed sales process? For years, the shed seller has often had the do the best you can standard. At Shed U, we want to help you make doing the best you can more than guesswork with a proven shed sales process. Shed U was created for you, the shed seller, and aims to help you, the shed seller, learn the best techniques for selling sheds. How do we do that? Elements of Shed University include sheducation you deserve as a shed seller, such as sales process management, lead follow-up, and sales script development. But wait, there's more. Attending Shed U is double the fun, because after you attend Shed U on January 23rd and 24th of 2024 at the Knoxville Convention Center, you can attend the Garage Shed Carport Builder Show on January 24th and 25th. That's right. All registrants for Shed U receive complimentary admission to the GSCB show, which includes even more educational opportunities. If you have been wanting to improve your shed sales process for yourself or your sales team, be sure to attend Shed University, the obvious choice to grow your shed sales. At Shed University, class is now in session.
Yeah. All right. So I grew up in, your average household. I had mom and dad, two younger brothers, and it was pretty normal. I grew up in Western Kansas, been out here my whole life. And I think that as a kid, it's been 20 plus years ago, right? When I was a kid. So doesn't seem like it, but it has been that things weren't quite as handled the same as maybe they are today, as far as like mental health and keeping ourselves in check and really, we grew up, I would say we weren't rich by no means, but we weren't starving. I mean, we had what we needed, and dad and mom, they worked their butts off to provide for us. And I spent quite a bit of time raising my little brothers when I was younger. So I got to build a really cool relationship with them, and we still have good rapport as time has gone on. And have we always agreed? Absolutely not, and it was probably around the 14, 15-year-old mark, I decided that I would try and fit in with everybody. And so I started drinking a little bit and having, weekends was a little bit of drinking and partying and having fun. And at the time, it didn't seem like it was going to be an issue for me. And I started making friends and being one of the cool kids. But as time went on, it's really, time didn't even go on. It snowballed pretty fast. It didn't take until I was 15 and I was already doing cocaine, smoking marijuana. Cocaine was on the weekends, drinking probably most school nights. And it really affected my schooling. It affected my maturity level. It affected how I handled different things, as far as maybe stressful things that come up when there was confrontation or something. I tended to shy away from it and then go hide that in drugs and alcohol. By the time I was 18 years old, I was doing methamphetamine on a pretty regular basis. It was one of my favorites. got me up. It got me moving. I was fun and exciting, and it was just able to fit in. And I can't explain really why I did it. I don't have a good reason as to why, other than I was probably using it as a Band-Aid over a lot of my suppressed thoughts and emotions and my fear of not being good enough for people, and some of the things like that. As I grew up, and instead of dealing with them like most normal people do, I found a way to hide it so I didn't have to feel it. And kids, ended up having kids at about 23, and I tried really hard. I tried super hard to quit doing methamphetamine, and I had this thought process of, well, I'm just drinking. I'm just drinking. It's okay. But I'm not normal. And I don't think that there's a lot of us out there. I go to AA a lot, and I meet a lot of cool people through that. And I think some of us just have an allergy to drugs and alcohol. We just don't react the same as a lot of people do. And I didn't just drink a little bit. I was drinking half gallons of whiskey, every couple days, and was checking out of my kids growing up. And I missed out on a lot of football, or like, little league t-ball games and soccer games and stuff like that, because I was just choosing to not be present. And I was fighting some demons that I didn't want anybody to know about. Mm-hmm. My son, he's been a huge part of my recovery, and he's one of my biggest fans and supporters to this day. He was actually in on the podcast with Gary, and he got to share a little bit of that story growing up. And I knew the story, and I know the story, but hearing him say the words that, mm-hmm. My dad wasn't present. My dad was just busy doing what he was doing in the garage, and we thought it was normal. And some of the things that he went through, like, I had to get back on the podcast and like dry my eyes out because I was crying behind the camera. Like, I was like, oh man, this is, it's getting deep, Yeah. So, time went on. We had the family and things like that. It was 2018, beginning of summer 2018, I started to go through a divorce. And at that point, my grandma had just passed away. I'm going through a divorce. There wasn't much that was keeping me back. I was still at 31 years old handling things like I did when I was 15, 16 years old. And that was just bury the emotion under drugs and alcohol and just keep on trying to get through life. And I thought that was all there was to life. I, at that point, didn't know there was this entire other side of things that was so good. And that didn't take very long of operating on those kind of bounds that I ended up getting arrested and had some pretty serious consequences for that. I mean, I was looking at 8 years in prison, and probably not being able to see my kid and things like that for quite a while. And so I was sitting in jail, and this is my favorite part of the whole story, because I got down on my knees and I said, God, I messed this one up. This one's pretty rough, and I don't think that I don't know. I said, if you can pull it out, if we can work something out. I'm like, I don't want to do drugs anymore. I want you to take the taste of drugs and alcohol out of my mouth, and I will be sober for the rest of my life if we can get through this. And I've had a lot of people tell me that God don't barter, but he bartered with me that day. And so it ended up, I got 3 years of probation, and got out and started to do the thing. And and there was not that it was easy. It was never easy. It wasn't like, oh man, you've got this disease and now all of a sudden you're just cured. I had a huge friend, a support system that he wouldn't let me do anything dumb. He kept me in check for the first couple months, but I did slip up shortly after that, and I got, I mean, I no more than slipped up. And that day they called me in for a UA. And I was like, oh man, God's for real. Like, he was serious. And I remember thinking that, like, all right, I made this deal with you. I'm going to hold it up. I got you. Like, I see you, man. And so, I mean, went through that. It all worked out. I had to do some counseling and some things like that to kind of clear that up and take some classes on cognitive thinking and a few of those things. But after that, I decided that was it. That was the last one. And I started going to some meetings, going to some AA meetings and getting to know some people and really just putting all effort into staying sober, because for one, I just didn't want to go to prison. I didn't think that was right. I didn't feel like that was the right answer. And the second, I had my son and my daughter, and they needed dad. They needed dad. So I really just thought at that point that it was time to pull it together. And the best part about it was I met with people who understood my story. I connected with a lot of people who I could call that just genuinely cared about my well-being. I think that was what the groups did more than anything for me, was give me someone who I thought actually understood what I was going through.
The thing is, your story is it's such a I don't mean to take away from it with this comment. It's such a common occurrence that we see a lot of times in the world and with men today, but especially even in the construction field. I definitely see that happen constantly. Like, we've had friends and family members that, I remember Zach specifically working in home building whenever I was young and thinking, man, wouldn't it be good to be around a good group of guys? And like, the group that I was around were just like up to no good all the time. You know what I mean? And the next thing you know, they're drinking after work every day, and you start getting invited into that circle. And it's not even really like a question. Like, you're not asked to be involved. You're just, next thing you know, you're just there. You're involved because it happens before you know how to assess the situation, it seems like. And that's not being in control of yourself and your environment. And that's what it took me a long time to learn, to like, wait a minute, you've got to, and I still struggle with it, to create your own environment. Don't let it be created for you. And your story is, I remember running across all these shed guys and being like, how cool would it be to be working for some of these organizations that put Christ first in all that they do, that sort of take a guy under their wing and say, hey, we'll teach you. And like, everything was like rough language, rough this, rough that. Everything was always like downtrodden. And it was almost like you were just waiting to fail. And it was just an accepted occurrence between everybody. I also know that like a lot of people go through, physical pain by getting into things like construction or if they're doing carpentry work. A lot of guys I know said this started out with back pain. And then I went to the doctor, and the doctor wouldn't up the prescription. So we started buying prescriptions, like just over the black market or whatever you would want to call it, and they're like, next thing you know, I'm buying prescriptions. Well, guess what kind of guys sell prescription pills? They sell other stuff a lot of times. And I specifically remember a friend of mine saying, I started out with back pain and I ended up somehow being a meth addict. And it just blew my mind. I always thought, somebody who did that was they were someone else. They weren't us, that come from a good family, that had a construction business, that did well. So, it worked on his psyche even more mentally to be like, wait a minute, I'm not from that side of the tracks, or I come from this good family, and it sneaks up on you. And we just see it in construction a lot. Would you agree with that? Do you feel like you've seen that in construction, like related fields a lot?
We're in a man's industry.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where the men are. So you men go out and have a beer after work, and it's 100 degrees, and it's the thing to do. And when I started in construction, that was 16, almost 17 years ago when I started my first construction job. That was the thing to do. Is after work, we grabbed a 12 pack, we put it on ice, and we sat around and talked about the day. We BS'd about tomorrow. We solved all the world's problems.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just kind of how we fell into it. And like you said, you don't even see it happening. It's just the thing. And also on another point that you made there, that the people that think, well, that's below me and that's not who I am. Addiction doesn't choose. It's not choosy. It doesn't care if you're a doctor. It doesn't care if you're a lawyer. I mean, it's just inside. And once it gets in and it sinks its ugly teeth, in my opinion, I think that it's a lot of it has to do with being Satan. And as much as he can fog the mental clarity that we have and make things that maybe don't seem real, or that, like the spiritual world. I think there's a spiritual battle that goes on all the time. And if you can fog that clarity that God is good and God is love, and you can get someone that's down on themselves, it's a lot easier to keep them from going the correct path.
Man, I spent a year of my life was spent working at a faith-based drug and alcohol rehabilitation. Still one of the best years of my life, closest I feel like I've ever been to God through that process, and watching and leading men through that process was just very humbling for me, because I have all of these thoughts on this. I started to go down not just a bad road myself, but the good road, and the good alternative was to go to work in corrections, which was readily available in our area because it's a good state job, good retirement, good pay. But then I started to think about even the word itself, Zach, corrections. Like, what are we correcting? Because to me, the penal system in the world is sort of broken. You know what I mean? Like, jail seems more like a business than it seems like a corrective and measurable thing. 680,000 people get released from prison every year, and they go into your supermarkets and your churches and your communities. And my thought is, were they ever really given a shot at rehabilitation? And I remember thinking like that got me called a lot of names, left wing, bleeding heart, hug a thug, you name it, all of those things. But I thought, man, if they're good enough for Jesus to love, they're good enough for me to love too, right? So, 2/3 of the New Testament Bible was written from a prison. Paul and Silas spent a lot of time, talking about that. And they weren't talking about the 2023 prisons where you get to watch TV. They were, you know what I mean, in prison, and they still celebrated. So like for me, I just kind of see, 25% of the world's prison population exists here in America. So, like my thought is, are we doing anything to make their life better? Is there a thought of rehabilitation over retribution? Like I can't remember how many people I worked with that said, lock them up, throw away the key. And I'm like, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if Jesus, didn't say that? Because he didn't say lock them up and throw away the key, and,
The shed industry is comprised of a diverse group of companies, but also a diverse group of shed sellers. Proven sales processes are the backbone of successful businesses, and their effectiveness cannot be overstated. At ShedU, our processes provide a structured framework that guides the shed sales professional through the various stages of the sales cycle, ensuring consistency and efficiency. By following a proven process, shed salespeople can better understand their customers' needs, build trust, and tailor their approach accordingly. Additionally, these processes are developed based on years of experience and extensive market research, incorporating best practices and strategies that have yielded positive results. Your Sheducation from Shed University will not only minimize guesswork, but also maximize the chances of closing deals and achieving sales targets. Our proven shed sales process will empower you or your shed sales team to work smarter, not harder, and lead to increased productivity, customer satisfaction, and business growth. It's time to take the guesswork out of your shed sales process. Invest in yourself and your team when you attend class at Shed University. Don't be tardy. Book your ticket now at sheduniversity.com for this year's session on January 23rd and 24th at the Knoxville Convention Center, just before the GSCB show. At Shed University, class is now in session.
I come to find that in our own adventure, like most people are going to jail and prison because of things like drugs and addiction. So like whenever you really start to look into it, maybe a lot of it's not actually violent crime, not to suggest that some of it's not and that those people don't deserve punishment. But I guess what I'm saying is like, it's almost an epidemic of sorts that, you know, we hear stories like yours day in and day out. And we hear a lot of that in specifically those details of like construction, whether they're building post frame, pole barns, barn dominiums, sheds, mini barns, or things like that. I could probably find a handful of guys who can tell you, yeah, we have a hard time finding help because a lot of people show up until they get beer money and then they're out of here. You know, they go find another job. So it's almost as if there needs to be a foundation and a base. And of course, me and you believe that God is that, that base. Mm-hmm. But, I'm just excited for you, man. Just like listening to your story. I can't wait now to go back and listen to your podcast. I remember seeing the video and a clip of it with your son on there, but I haven't got a chance to listen to it. And that's my fault. I've just been so busy. And I try to follow
it's all right.
And Randy all I can. And I definitely want to hear more about your story. So congratulations, man.
The interesting part that you were just talking about there is what are we doing to help? Yeah. And what's the system doing, right? And I agree with you. I think that the system is kind of flawed. I think that we're not offering as much on the front end as we could. We're also dealing with a pretty controlling thought process when you get into addiction. A lot of people, that's all they can think about. And so it's really hard to be in on like the other side. I think there's a lot of heartbreak involved with people who, like you did, having to work in the rehabilitation centers and things like that. You get a lot of people who you see, they get a light about them, and you start to see some sobriety, and then they go back out there, and it's really hard, and it's really rough. And I think a lot of people get disheartened, and they have this attitude of lock them up and throw away the key. They're never going to get better. It's you know, they're making a choice, and however, some of it I do believe is a choice. Like I have a choice today to drink or use drugs. But a lot of it is my thought process and my mentality. What am I putting inside today? Am I putting in good things, or am I taking the bad things that happen and am I dwelling on them, and am I, you know, making mountains out of molehills, or am I using things as an opportunity to grow and learn? Mm-hmm. Bad things happen. Stuff happens all the time that is not ideal in business. You know that as well as everybody else, right? Like, there's days that are just Monday on a Wednesday. And the thing that I have to watch in myself, and one of my big things is is I would relapse, and I will relapse long before I ever pick up drugs
That's
again.
right. That's right.
My mentality
Your
will
mentality.
change. My words
Yep.
will change. And so that's one thing that I try to talk to when I'm talking to new guys coming in, and even guys that have been in the programs for a long time. It is, where are you at mentally? Like when we start having these conversations and they start getting pretty entailed, it's where are we mentally? What have we been doing? Have we been going to our meetings? Are we grateful for where we're at today? And those kind of things start to add up. I've got a friend of mine who is almost to celebrate 2 years clean and sober. And man, he called every morning at 6 a.m. and we would, like, for the first year, it was on it. And we would talk and we would go through things, and then he quit calling. And man, that's kind of weird. I haven't heard from him in a few days. So I called him up and he said, man, I'm just in a terrible spot. And I said, well, what's your meeting schedule look like? And, well, I made it to a meeting in a couple weeks. And I said, well, we got to have people around us, and we got to be putting that in. And I do think that that's important, whether it's AA meetings or Celebrate Recovery meetings, or just sitting around with like-minded people, I think is what really starts to feed that in our mind and really grow that inside of us.
Yeah, absolutely. In a CR, any of those that you're going to, they're necessary. Church, building a friendship. Some people will talk about, like, it was on a podcast earlier, they was talking about C12. I mean, there's so many different things in organizations. Obviously CR, Celebrate Recovery, is a sort of a national program that's a faith-based program. I've always had a belief in faith-based programs. I'm a huge, proponent of Teen Challenge and like what they've established on a national platform over years. Because I believe that you can get clean without those things, but man, I just kind of feel like Jesus is at the base of all that we do. So of course he's going to be in the middle of, recovery as well, so, those are times of my life so what chip do you have right now?
I have 5 years.
5 years.
September 18th was 5 years.
Yeah. Congrats, man. I talked to my sister last night. She lives in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and she's got 5 years clean as well, too. So
nice. Great.
Yeah. She was just telling me that while we were talking last night on the phone. So, yeah, man, this is it's just a real thing. It's addiction and that, and it affects all people, but whether it's a chemical dependency, like you said, it gets beyond the point of like, just don't do that, and drinking. I know a lot of times I call it wet brain, and you probably have heard that phrase a time or two, but it gets to the point to where, it's almost like it takes over you, and who you are is just a shell of yourself. And, man, I could talk with you for days on it. Good friend of mine, Jason, who I still talk to. I'm excited to watch his recovery effort. Unfortunately, on Easter Sunday, I really had one that hit me kind of hard. I had a guy that I'd poured into for 6 years, eventually pass away. And it's just, those are real things. Those people have kids. Those people have families. They have, and to me, everything reverberates. An action creates a reaction. Mm-hmm. So like what you're doing is affecting others. And man, I'm just happy for you more than anything. It just so happens that you're in the shed or construction post frame business, but honestly, everything you're talking about, man, was a big part of my world for a long time. It's not as prevalent in my life today, but I mean, even my buddy Dylan has a great story for those of you that work with Dylan in our marketing capacities and you talk to him on a regular day, you should just talk to that guy one day about sort of his own journey, because he's got a really cool story, a really cool testimony. So Zach, what's the future, man? Like getting back to post frame and just to segue away from the content there, let it be where it is. God bless it, and thankful for you. But getting back to in your journey, but getting back to post frame, what's it going to be, man, for you over the next 5 years, 10 years as you move forward? What's this going to look like? You feel like it's just growing? You feel good about it? You mentioned that you use Smart Build in your software design. Keith Dietzen, we've had him on the show before. Very awesome guy. What's your next step outside of like building out these things? And I'm just kind of curious, where's your story go from here?
Hello, shed sellers. Did you catch the latest Real Work Labs interview with George Converse? If not, don't miss this value-packed episode. Head to Shed Geeks Podcast YouTube and search Real Work Labs. George and the Real Work Labs crew are riding the wave of Google's latest updates, taking your digital presence to the next level. We're tech artisans crafting your neighborhood brand voice for shed sellers like you to stand out, gain trust, and get found online. Our software will easily capture your work snapshots, videos, weave your craft's story, and get reviews all in one virtual experience. Our innovation goes beyond getting found for your business location, rather getting found for your work locations. Reviews intertwine with their corresponding job sites. When potential customers seek local expertise, you're the proven solution they'll find. It's high time to map your reviews and showcase your beautiful work in a meaningful way that builds trust in customers' neighborhoods. Ready for the journey? Visit shedgeek.realworklabs.com or call George today at 480-787-7575. Real Work Labs, elevating your trust, increasing your conversions, and getting you found where you work in the neighborhoods you serve, one shed at a time.
Well, there's only one person that honestly knows that, and I don't think he's going to tell me just yet. But no, we're going to keep driving into the market. Barn Dominiums, we're going to really intermingle both of our general construction crew with the post frame world and get these guys into custom home building. And that's really where I want to see it go. I have this pipe dream that we're going to train these guys, and we got a great group of guys right now. I love them to death. They're all a lot of fun to be around. We have a lot of leaders in the group and guys that want to become leaders. And I think that's great. We're training, we're real big on training and personal development and goal setting and getting these people kind of geared up. I think that I love helping people, as I mentioned earlier. And I think that we're in an industry that we're kind of missing some people there. There's like an age range. You're either 60, 70 years old in construction, or you're, young kid that's coming in. Then there's not really much in the middle. And I really think that we're going to have an opening, and my son is gung ho about going into construction management. He's 14, about to be 14. And he is just set on construction management, and we're setting him up to eventually own this company and things like that. But if I had a full pipe dream, I would sell the name and the franchise it essentially out to these guys and allow them to go out and take it and run with it and continue to spread what we're spreading. The one thing that I want to just kind of touch on about the sobriety is that you're not alone. I think a lot of people feel that they're just left alone, and it feels that way. I will agree. I felt that way for years, but don't ever think that you can't reach out to someone like me or Shannon. I'm sure would take a phone call and help people through this. That's why I like doing these podcasts on this. It's kind of my give back to the world. Like, somebody might hear it. One person might hear it. and it might change their life. And it was worth it. It was, it takes a little time and some planning and stuff like that. But to help that one person, like, yeah, it's an hour to me and you, but it might be their whole life.
That's right.
And they could be reborn again. And I know at 31 years old, I figured out my purpose. And it feels like I'm living something new. I feel better. I'm in better shape. Everything. I just have a way better attitude. I used to be a Debbie Downer, and I'm going to keep pushing that. I want to help as many people as I can on that. But with the company wise, we keep good values up front. Treat people with respect, the way you want to be treated. Do the right thing when people aren't looking. That's, the big one. Even if you can hide it, we need to do the right thing, guys. Like, that's how it works. And I just think that by taking that and sending this out to these guys that are coming in, that we're training, that we're bringing in, we're watching their families grow up. We're seeing them get places. And when you're young, getting a new truck is the coolest thing you could ever do. Right. And so, heck, you're almost 40 and getting a new truck.
You're an ecosystem for growth and help and mentorship. And you probably saw a lot of that through people sponsoring you. You talked about your buddy who wouldn't let you do anything wrong. So you get to turn around and sort of be in the driver's seat versus, just being in the bed of the truck. Right. And you're saying, man, this makes a difference. It made such a difference for me that I want to make a difference to other. And I think that's how good begets good. I love your story, dude. I want to know you more. You have my word. If I ever want to build a barndominium, it might be on the bucket list, man. I'm going to give you a call up and say, Zach, let's figure something out here. Who knows if that ever happens.
We can work through that for sure. Right. We can navigate the geographical.
Dude, I just want to meet you sometime. Love to, whenever I'm up that way, I'd love to swing by and say hello. I love to hear these stories. I'm just a big proponent of rehabilitation. I believe it works. I know that sometimes you see people go through 8, 10, 12 times almost, it feels like, but man, there's nothing better. I don't know what drives the human behavior behind the mentality of making a person want to do something. I know until they're ready to do it, you can't help them. All you can do is satisfy them to some extent. But man, there's nothing more exciting than watching a guy or a gal just get it. And you know what I'm talking about, Zach. Like, they just get it. There's a aha moment, as Max Lucado says. There's a aha moment that just kind of like wakes you up and you realize, wait a minute, now all of a sudden you know your purpose. When you know your purpose, you'll never be without purpose again. You'll always understand what your mission is. And part of that for you, I feel like, is helping others as others have helped you along the way. And man, I'll tell you what, if that can be a testimony that comes out of the Shed Geek podcast, well, that's just awesome. And I agree with you. If one person could be helped because of that today, whether it's mental health, addiction, whatever it is they're suffering through, if they just listen to this podcast, it makes their day better. And they say, I need to reach out to somebody and I'm not sure who. Think about that person in your life that you feel comfortable doing that with. And if you're not sure who that is, give us a call. But let me just go ahead and let you in on the secret. All of that leads back to the Lord, because that's where we point all of our fingers to whenever you say, well, you seem to have gotten better or figured it out or whatever it is. Anyone I know, including myself, has to say, it's for us to bow to him and say it is because of him and his strength and his stripes that we're better. So
alone I am weak.
This is great, dude. These podcasts make me want to do more podcasts like this. Whenever people say, well, is that about sheds? I don't know. Were you blessed because of it? That's all that really matters. Was today a good conversation and your day's better because we had it? I hope it was. We definitely need to connect, man. I want to connect with you in person sometime. Let's make that happen.
Yes,
I'm
for
gonna
sure.
I'm gonna do the same thing. We're 55 minutes in, and it's hard to believe, Zach. It happens really quick. But I've been giving everybody a chance to turn the microphone around just to interview me for a question or two, whether it's podcasting, or whether it's I don't know, whatever comes to mind, addiction, prison, faith, sheds, you name it. What questions, if any, would come to mind for the Shed Geek? If you could ask me one or two questions of anything.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions.
Go for it.
If you could do anything that you could think of, dream of doing, what would you dream to do?
It's hard for me to say I'm not doing that, man, because I'm so relationship driven that I don't know how to be anything else. Like so I have to think about what takes care of us financially long term. My family's my first ministry, and we're trying to develop things that will help take care of us long term, so that we can be comfortable and not just comfortability, but so that we can pour back into others and help others. I think, there's a responsibility that comes with success, whether that be financial success or mental success, whatever it is you're seeing the area of success, you have to pour back into people because of it. So, I love doing what I'm doing. I woke up maybe 3 months ago and I told somebody, I think it was Gary, I was actually talking to this about, I said, I always wondered if I was, going to be a public speaker of some kind. And I woke up and realized, wait a minute, I'm already basically a public speaker. I might not be, you know what I mean, like Gary V, or I might not be Eric Thomas or Simon Sinek, and maybe that's just not meant to be my lane. But I'm basically speaking for a living now, and I just never realized it. It took me 2 years before I realized that's what I was doing. So I'm kind of doing what I enjoy. I want to spend more time with my family in this next season. We got a granddaughter to be here in March, and even my son, I just want to spend more time with him. And I'm getting to know my wife again at the end of this raising kids adventure that we've been on. So I can't say there's a whole lot more that I want to do. I kind of feel like I am living what I'm supposed to be doing and what I want to be doing in many ways.
Good. That's exciting. That's really cool. What do you think as far as like a booth at the NFBA? Would you do on-site interviews?
Yeah, I think so. I think Mike could probably tie in some of the marketing components that we do, because there just might be an opportunity there to help folks in a marketing capacity. But generally speaking, I'd love to do some interviews. So if I do get a booth there, I think that would be my goal, is to do like some live interviews and meet a few different people and hear their stories. Because the podcast isn't just as much about the specifics or the details. I mean, you could be talking to me right now about purlins and, you know what I mean? Why we put the metal on this way and what the difficulty is in wainscoting versus, whatever. And we get into those conversations at times because they're necessary, or the details of like a 3D software that builds it out. But honestly, man, I like shed history, people's personal history, and like figuring out sort of what makes you tick. How did you land where you are today, and what got you there? Because like most people don't see the projection of that path, so yeah, that's what I'd probably do.
Well, it's cool. It's you said you went to the expo last year, right?
I did. Yeah.
We had to cross paths at some point during them, because we were there.
I wasn't wearing this. I wasn't wearing this whenever I came, just to be clear. So,
well, that's probably why I didn't recognize you.
Yeah. I was there. I was in Louisville, and then I was also in what was the year before? Nashville. I was in Nashville as an FBA. So yeah, I've went to a couple of them now, and I think they're coming to Iowa this year.
Des Moines.
So maybe we can meet up there.
Yeah, that'd be great. We have plans to go. We're getting everything set up to take a couple of our guys with us and kind of make a little appreciation deal out of it as we go along, and just have some fun and get some new industry tips, because they've got so much that they kind of bring in every year, and it just changes. It's just, there's always something to learn. I think if we stop learning, we're dying. So,
All right. Dude, I've had a great time here. Listen, I'm a fan of prayer. You care if I just close this out in prayer here before we go?
yeah.
All right. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the conversation with Zach. Thank you for his testimony, and let it lead others to find the peace that he has found through finding you. Ask that if anybody is suffering with addiction, mental health, any area that they feel is out of control, that God, that we could be a resource to get them to you, and to recognize that it is you who are sovereign, and that we just need to submit to that so that we can be healed as well. We just ask that you would watch over all of those that are families that are suffering with just the depths that addiction brings, and that you would be a light to them, or that someone around them could work to bring forth sort of a path to you through their actions, Father, not just what they say, but what they do, and that could be seen, and that it could be known, and through that you could be seen, and that you could be known. But thank you for Zach. I ask that you bless his business adventures as he continues on, and just really the whole industry, that you would just let us be busy about your work. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you for listening to today's episode